Here we are again with another huge news and fact roundup of everything we've learned this past week with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Our last video received so much positive feedback, we decided to continue with that format. So instead of making separate videos about each individual piece of news, we'll be doing more videos like this, which is a collection of everything that has been released. In this episode, we will talk about Aonuma's hints about where this game will take place in the timeline, how Breath of the Wild doesn't use the Nintendo Switch's hardware to its fullest potential, Aonuma's personal thoughts on the female lead character which may actually surprise you, why certain changes have been made since the game was first shown off 2 to 3 years ago, Jesse's thoughts on the spoiler HMK is talking about, what it could be, and much more. Make sure you like and subscribe so you don't miss out on a future video. And be sure to leave your thoughts on today's news in the comments below, as well as anything that I may have missed. And if we use it in a future video, I'll be sure to give you a shout out and credit you for bringing it to my attention. And with all that out of the way, let's get started.
Our first bit of news is from an interview with Aonuma, where he was asked by Juke's video why Breath of the Wild looks so different from previous games, and why were these changes made. Do you think these changes are necessary to ensure that Zelda continues to reach the largest possible audience? To which Aonuma replies, "It was not a question of saying, we need to make the game like this, so it appeals to today's audience. Instead, we tried to do something that we had never done before. So we decided to make this Zelda game much larger in scope than what we have done before, because we finally had the graphical power to make such a huge game a reality. Then, after creating such a huge overworld, we looked at it and thought about the ideas we weren't able to achieve before due to limited hardware, and what we could do now to make a gigantic world like this interesting. And so, we came up with the game engine we have now. For example, harvesting or being able to directly affect and change the world around you." This is amazing to hear, because it means Nintendo didn't make the Zelda game they thought would please the largest audience. They made it to please themselves based on ideas they weren't able to achieve with past titles, due to being limited by outdated hardware, and in the end, they were able to finally create the Zelda game they wanted, without being restricted by hardware.
Next up at number 2, the timeline placement for Breath of the Wild. Now this is a very widely debated topic for the game, as some fans believe the Koroks are proof it belongs in the adult timeline with Wind Waker, while there are others who think that because Hyrule Castle and Castletown look practically identical to Twilight Princess's, and also the inclusion of Wolf Link, this puts that game right there in the child timeline with Twilight Princess. While there are others who think that Link dying or being defeated in Ocarina of Time's third timeline split, and this Link being a Link who is resurrected, the placement of the Master Sword, among several other things, means this game belongs in the Downfall timeline, as it looks identical to the artwork for A Link to the Past. And then, as if that weren't enough, we have people who believe this is a convergence of the timeline, as it has evidence from all 3 of the timelines, and the only logical reason is that this game takes place as a way to combine all the timelines. Well, we actually have a very strong hint from Aonuma himself where this game takes place. So let's push fan theories aside for a bit. I mean, you guys know I love me a good Zelda theory once in a while, and you do too. That's probably why you're even subscribed to this channel in the first place, right? And if you're not, well, what are you waiting for? You should subscribe. You can't see me right now, but I'm winking. You should subscribe. During an interview with Aonuma, Juke's video cut straight to the point and asked why Breath of the Wild includes elements of the Wind Waker such as the Koroks, tree seeds, and the Deku Tree. To what extent is this world in Breath of the Wild related to the Wind Waker? IG Aonuma replies, "I'll be very frank with you. For each Zelda that we've realized, we always reuse Zelda elements from previous games to refresh the past games in the new games. As you can see for yourself, in Breath of the Wild, we used a graphic style that is very close to animation. It has therefore been assumed that it would be much simpler to take up graphic elements and assets from Wind Waker rather than any other Zelda game. It is actually a graphic point of view that the two are very similar, but if you talk about the story, to be frank, there is no particular connection between Wind Waker and Breath of the Wild. Graphically, it was much simpler for us to work on the game, reusing the graphical elements of Wind Waker." So right here, Aonuma is basically saying while this game has assets from Wind Waker, the story itself has nothing to do with the game. This means the game cannot take place in the adult timeline or be a merging of the 3 timelines. The interview continues with Juk's video asking, Skyward Sword, the latest installment of the series, was at the very beginning of the chronology of the history of Hyrule. Where do you find this episode? Aonuma replies with, I cannot yet answer this question because I want players to discover some elements of the game on their own. But you have some clues when you see that in the game, there is a voice of a young woman who tells you that the world you are in has suffered many battles against Ganon. You can imagine roughly what period it is. Here, ladies and gentlemen, is our second hint. He says the game takes place at a point where Hyrule has had many battles with Ganon. This rules out 2 of the timelines. It cannot take place in the unified timeline, as Ocarina of Time was the very first time Ganon or Ganondorf made an appearance. Since Ocarina of Time is the end of the unified timeline, it has to take place after. This leaves the Child and Downfall timeline. It would have to come at the end of the Child timeline after Twilight Princess and Four Swords Adventure, as the world had had many battles with Ganon. I wouldn't necessarily say 2 battles count as many, as Aonuma didn't say a couple. So if it is on this timeline, it would need to take place at the very end, as some would say 3 battles would suffice as a lot. The next choice is the Downfall timeline, which if you count Ocarina of Time, A Link to the Past, the bonus boss with Ganon in Oracle games, Yuga Ganon in A Link Between Worlds, and finally the original Legend of Zelda, Hyrule Fantasy. Oddly enough, Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link didn't have Ganon as a boss fight, even though when you died, he would appear laughing at you. At this point he is already dead, and his minions are trying to kill you to resurrect him by, and God help us, this is an actual story synopsis from Nintendo. Ganon's minions want to resurrect Ganon by killing you and spilling your blood on the ashes of their god. So at this point, Hyrule has had 5 to 6 wars with Ganon, which matches perfectly for Aonuma's quote of many battles with Ganon. So if we take Aonuma's words as truth, the game has to take place somewhere in the Downfall timeline. We'll be making a video going more in depth on this soon, so keep an eye out for that.
Finally, we make our way to number 3. In the last video, we had a quote from Aonuma where he said Breath of the Wild was made for the Wii U and ported to the Switch. Although the Switch version does run better than the Wii U version, the game isn't properly optimized to use the hardware to its fullest potential. Now we have even more to add to this. While the game does use the rumble functions from the Joy-Cons, it doesn't use the newly branded HD rumble feature Nintendo is justifying for the insanely high cost of the Joy-Cons. When asked about the feature, Aonuma replied with, "Of course, if the game had been created exclusively for the Switch, we could benefit from the unique capabilities of the machine, including HD Rumble. It is quite extraordinary. For example, you can try to guess how many balls are hidden in the controller. That's something I would have liked to use. Now, I'm not entirely sure how Zelda could make use of the HD Rumble mechanic, but if a Zelda game was built completely from the ground up for the Switch, it could potentially look even better than the Switch version we see now. It could potentially have optional motion controls, as the Joy-Cons do have a better version of the IR sensor found within the Wii controllers. Maybe an entirely brand new item could be brought into the game that made use of the HD Rumble, similar to the beetle in Skyward Sword, which made full use of the Motion Plus controls. If you have any awesome ideas on how a new Zelda game could make use of the HDR Rumble or any of the other Switch features, let us know in the comments below.
At number 4, we have what is potentially the most debated topic in the Zelda series. In fact, there is a very high chance you'll get death threats from the hardcore fans for even thinking about it. Trust me, it's like their spidey senses are tingling. They know. A female protagonist. Whether you are for or against this, it is important to note that on several occasions, Nintendo has strongly thought about using a female Link or Zelda as the main character. Aonuma's most recent interviews may even surprise you. All jokes aside, a female protagonist in the Zelda series has been a huge topic of discussion for many years, but recently became popular due to Linkle's inclusion as Hyrule Warriors DLC, and Aonuma jokingly saying the protagonist we've seen in the original Breath of the Wild footage wasn't necessarily Link. He has been open about this, saying that it was just a joke that was misinterpreted by the fans. Then after the most recent E3, he mentions that although he designed Link in Breath of the Wild with some feministic qualities, he is most definitely a male. But they feel the player should view Link in whichever way they can best relate to him, because he is in the end, ultimately, supposed to represent you, the player. We have 2 more interviews where Aonuma mentions a female protagonist. This first one from GameSpot, where Breath of the Wild producer Eiji Aonuma told GameSpot that he and Nintendo had thought about it, but decided that if they were going to go with a female protagonist, it would just be simpler to use Princess Zelda as the main character. So why didn't Nintendo go for this option? Well, according to Aonuma, it would have fouled up the series lore. If we have Princess Zelda as the main character who fights, then what is Link going to do? Aonuma said. Taking that into account, and also the idea of the balance of the Triforce, we thought it best to come back to the original makeup. During a more recent video, JuxVideo.com asked if Nintendo really considered having the player choose between a male or female. Aonuma replies, "It was just a rumor. 2 years ago when we first showed images of the game at E3, people started asking questions such as, 'But it's Link, why is it like that?' As I wanted to say as little as possible, very stupidly I replied, 'But wait, we never said it was Link. I cannot tell you who this character is, nothing was announced at all.' And suddenly people started to say, 'He said it might not be Link, so maybe it's a girl.' As a result, people got excited, they threw a lot of smoke on the answers, and ultimately it became a speculation, and people thought it might be a woman. Here, it will teach me to do the mysterious." Jux Video then asks if it was an idea that he liked. Aonuma again responds, "We do not forbid ourselves to the extent that it has already happened. In Hyrule Warriors, you could choose between different characters, whether male or female. There is nothing that prevents us from making a main female character in a mainline Zelda game." The fact that Nintendo has gone back and forth with the idea of making a Zelda game with a female lead is very surprising. However, just as many fans thought voice acting would ruin the series, some think a female hero would do the same. While we personally prefer a male Link as our hero in the traditional Zelda game, we imagine the best way to implement a female character would be to use the female character as like Link's sister or twin, similar to Aryll in Wind Waker. Since Link is born with the spirit of the original hero inside him, perhaps twins born would both possess the spirit, have the female version to be completely optional. This way, the people who want to continue the story as a male can. The people who want to play as a female can as well. It wouldn't take anything away from the story, as Four Swords Adventures, Triforce Heroes, and in some ways Minish Cap all had multiple heroes. The best way to add in this gender option would be in a similar way to Pokemon, where the game basically asks you if you're male or female. Let's use Wind Waker as an example. Instead of Link's sister waking him up on top of the lookout tower, let's have it begin in the same way as most Zelda games begin. Link and his sister, or twin, both are in separate beds sleeping. Link's bed on the left side of the room, and his sister's bed on the right side. The game begins with a cutscene of Link's grandmother walking in the bedroom, waking both of them up. As both sit up in their bed, the game pops up with text and asks you if you are a male or female. Again, similar to how Pokemon literally asks you. Then depending on which option you choose, the camera pans behind the one you picked. That character is the one who goes on the adventure, and the other can help you in certain situations, just like how in Wind Waker a side character helps you in certain dungeons.
Finally, we come to the last bit of news on our list. This is, I guess, more of a PSA. It involves our friend and fellow Chamber of Sages member, HMK. Recently, he posted a video warning everyone of spoilers. He doesn't mention where to find them or what they even are, just that they exist, and if you don't want the game spoiled, you should be on the lookout and careful when searching for Zelda news. Personally, I've had several comments and messages from people saying they would continue watching my theory videos and support my channel, but we're going to stay away from certain videos because of potential spoilers, which is completely understandable. Now, HMK went out of his way by posting this video warning those of you who don't want the game ruined that they do exist. I commented on the video in support by saying too much hype, as HMK's videos are all about being excited and hyped. People took these 3 little words as me somehow being negative. Within minutes, I seen a tweet I was tagged in with HMK saying that according to Game Over Jesse's comment on YouTube, it may be a negative spoiler. He said, too much hype. Now, I'm only adding this in because it's getting a bit out of hand. Apparently, 3 little words, too much hype, has been taken out of context. I'm suddenly bombarded with tons of comments, emails, messages, and tweets demanding I tell them what I know and why I think this game is going to be bad, when the word negative wasn't even in the original comment. Just because HMK and I are in the same group and we've been in some of the same videos together doesn't mean he or any other member inside the Chamber of Sages tell me every little thing they know or do. In the same way, I don't share every idea I have with them either. So for those of you who were curious as to what the actual spoiler was, his posted on Twitter it is something some people probably already know. And it wasn't a huge or major spoiler, just something that would have been a surprise that is now ruined. In the same way, the newest trailer shown at the Switch presentation spoiled the location of the Master Sword. The brand new bird race in Breath of the Wild was spoiled by the Game Awards trailer. The 4 giant guardians were spoiled by Reggie showing off the Master's Edition of Breath of the Wild. Spoilers are literally everywhere for this game. It could be any one of these things or something just as simple that he was referring to. And those aren't even the biggest spoilers. Number 2 on this list gave you one of the biggest spoilers of the entire game, where it takes place on the timeline. And that wasn't a theory, a leak, or a rumor. It was 100% fact, based on Aonuma's, the creator of Breath of the Wild's, own words. The story has nothing to do with the Wind Waker, and takes place in a time that has had many battles between Hyrule and Ganon. This means it has to take place at the very end of the Downfall timeline before or after Zelda 1 and 2, as this is the only place where, again, in Aonuma's own words, many battles with Ganon has taken place. As the child timeline only has 2 or 3 battles, and even my own thoughts and original theory of it taking place between A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time would have only had 1 battle with Ganon. A Link to the Past has the same link as Link's Awakening and the Oracle games. A Link Between Worlds happens 100 years after A Link to the Past, which means Breath of the Wild can't take place between A Link to the Past and A Link Between Worlds, which already has 3 games between the two. Triforce Heroes has the same link as A Link Between Worlds and is a direct sequel, so this only leaves the time between A Link Between Worlds and Zelda 1, or at the very end of the timeline after Zelda 2, which is a direct sequel to Zelda 1. This entire spoiler thing has gotten way out of hand. If you wanted spoilers so bad, this is the biggest one you'll get. So were the harassments and threats really worth it? Let me know in the comments below. And for the rest of you patiently waiting for Breath of the Wild and supporting all of us on YouTube, thank you for everything you've allowed us to do. These videos wouldn't be possible without your support. And until next time, thank you all for watching. What's up everybody, really quick before we get to the usual end slate, I wanted to mention a quick update for this channel. I'm trying to bring together a few new series other than the usual discussions and news videos that we do. I would like to bring quality reviews, let's plays, do more live streams, a top 10 series, and more analysis videos. However, to do this, I need your help. Between being a new father, YouTube, and my real job, I don't have the time to work on all of these videos. So I'd like to bring on other people who can help out from time to time, like Sasizi and others who have helped host and edit videos before. To make this all happen and to get awesome rewards for yourself, head over to patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can get shoutouts and videos, join our group Discord and chat with us whenever you want, be a guest on some of our videos, and much more. I want to thank you all for watching this video. If you liked it, give this video a like and share it with your friends. If you haven't already, please subscribe so you don't miss out on future gaming news, theories, rumors, and discussions. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on how it could be improved. Your feedback is the most important part of bringing the quality of content on this channel to be the best that it can be. I would like to take this time to give a huge thank you to this month's Patreon supporters: Jonathan, The Edge Network, Magic Tech Review, John Frank, and Harris Priest. This video was made possible by supporters on Patreon. If you would also like to support this channel, head over to patreon.com/GameOverJesse, where you can support this channel as well. Rewards vary from having your topic featured on a future discussion, seeing videos early, joining as a guest on a video, shoutouts, and having a custom avatar similar to my own drawn of you to match any video game or anime art style that you would like. Mine is of myself as Link, but you could choose to have yours any way that you would like. Finally, I would like to thank my friends CS Guitar 89 and Gnomo Designs for providing the music and artwork for this video.